Hey ho everyone, and welcome to this in-depth review of the Black and White Ubers games of Week 1 from the Ubers Premier League. Today with me is Hack. Could you introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Hack or Hacky Most, as I've been in the past. So very glad to go through these four games together with you.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We've already also talked a lot about you. You've been a long-term player of
Yeah, a
all.
little bit too long almost, but
Yeah.
it's I think it's my 12th year playing this tier. So yeah, we'll see about how my knowledge is when I'm gonna articulate it.
Yeah, and I'm Waruchuu. Hopefully, with Black and White, I won't be as useless as for the other reviews, but let's just see how it goes. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you put in a shift lately, so you probably will get a lot of stuff here. So
yeah, so already going through the first game here, we can see Hack versus Evuelf.
yeah, this is obviously my game, and to preface it, I think I'm gonna be a little bit vague about exactly the nature of my sets, just because I'm in the tournament, and obviously in the other replays I don't know the exact sets, so I can say what moves I have, of course, and what I use, but
Yeah.
I might have to be a little bit vaguer, and as we'll see in this game, it will be a quite fun one. What do you think about sort of do you have any questions when you look at this team preview from your end? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so right away we can see that you're playing hyper offense while Evuelf is playing rain, bulky,
Yep.
rain balance. Stall isn't really a thing in Black and White, but definitely a team on the bulkier side. And
Definitely, yeah.
yeah, so the two things I'm wondering about right away. Heatran on a team such as this isn't really that common.
Mm.
And secondly, you're quite outspoken about that Deoxys speed isn't that great and Cloyster also not being that great. Could you give some insight as to why you chose these two?
Yeah, well, obviously, first of all, Evuelf is my long-time testing partner for almost every tier. So he knows my builder inside and out. He's a very strong, very, very strong player. Probably one of the 5 best players in Black and White of all times. I'm pretty sure that he would go to lengths looking at what I usually use and what I've been high on sort of last year. And it's definitely not been Deoxys speed. Let's put it that way. And a lot of these games is about the psychological nature of it, the surprise value, mixing it up. Even if it costs you maybe 1 week, you should tend to mix it up, because in the long term, people might be left wondering what the hell are you gonna do next week. So especially in this best of one setting, right? So you're kind of a little bit forced to play a little bit more mind games rather than being consistent, and it's something I take a lot of value in trying to do, because I think it's just been a more optimal strategy for these tournaments to try to like a little bit push it, go a little bit edgy, try to provoke, let's say, misplays or misdirection, because there's nothing easier face a team that you kind of structure you already know. You know what sets it is. Obviously, if you know the exact team, then you know what you're gonna do. But if you go a little bit unconventional while still sort of being in the frames of what you can and what you can't do in the tier, then I think for best of one, that's sort of what you want to do here. But obviously, Evuelf got like probably the best of me if you look at the matchup. He was very smart with choosing certain mons, and as you said, Heatran is definitely sticking out like a little bit of a weird choice on rain, but it can be done. I've been a very big on Rayquaza lately, so Heatran is one of the best counters to those kinds of Rayquazas I use. So that's sort of, I think, the preview, but it's completely correct that you have to assume that his team is quite bulky, mine is very offensive. I will also add that my team lacks 0 spikes immunities, and he has, of course, a Ferrothorn and a Tentacruel that they have spikes and toxic spikes respectively, right? Obviously, his Arceus form then clearly becomes Arceus Ghost, right, of preview. It's sort of a forbidden. We will actually see someone who breaks these rules later, but this it's almost forbidden to bring spikes and not have a ghost type in black and white, at least when you're running a bulky team. And it's not just because you want a spin block, but the ghost types, and especially Arceus Ghost, are some of the best mons in the game, right? So you're not really disadvantaged, right? So
another thing, so Heatran is definitely pretty good, especially against more offense Sun teams like Magic Sun, the archetype where you go at it with Choice Band Ho-Oh mostly.
Yep.
Since it resists both its stab or Flash Fire absorbs it even. But what I'm also wondering about, what does Gliscor really do for the team?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. First off, it's very hazard resilient, has that only Stealth Rock neutrality and then immune to the rest, and obviously Toxic Orb. And it's always important in black and white to actually have ways to win also, and Gliscor is sort of a win condition in the sense that it stall breaks, it taunts, it sort of sits on a lot of key Pokemon that are annoying for defensive teams. Especially if you run special defense on it, which has become a thing lately. You can use it to damage and even wall certain Dialga sets pretty bad, which they can be actually quite troublesome to damage with a stall team. It's also nice to have that general status immunity with a Toxic Orb. So that's and obviously a really good into Groudon.
Yeah. Also, before we start, I could mention for those who are only aware of current gen Gliscor, it doesn't have spikes here, but it does have Roost for additional recovery.
It may have.
Yeah, it potentially has it as an attack. Or as an option at least.
So we start with the Deoxys Speed lead, obviously, for myself, and obviously this was all expected from both ends, I would say. The Tentacruel is usually a rapid spinner, right? And it usually tries to get up toxic spikes somehow during the game, or it tries to scald the Deoxys and try to sort of break it down, try to rapid spin, and then Deoxys Speed has a lot of different techs to sort of make that not happen. And basically you have to be careful with Deoxys Speed against Tentacruel, because it could hold a Mental Herb, and then it can toxic spikes even if you taunt. And then I think what we will see here if you play that turn is that he has Magic Coat, and even if Psycho Boost is a pretty strong base power move, it doesn't actually do that much. So we'll just keep at it with Psycho Boosting, and the reason is sort of that I can't really afford to set Stealth Rocks against myself here, so I couldn't risk that. And if he has Mental Herb, Taunt is not gonna do that much. So I immediately settled for a plan to just wear him down, to kill him. And that sort of, if you look at my team, certain mons here are actually quite troubled by Tentacruel. I mean, Blaziken certainly, and Cloyster even, and then the Palkia also. They really don't like Tentacruel around. So I tried to just pick it off as fast as I can. So that's what happens on these turns.
It's also a bit of a weird situation for Evu, I would say here, since he does want to keep the Tentacruel against your team, but he also can't really switch it out, since it would lead to you getting all these hazards up, and that would also be a great detriment.
So this is exactly how my team is built actually. So the reason for the Psycho Boost, and you will see later, it has Rocky Helmet. I don't know if you will see that, but the reason for all these techs is exactly that you want Tentacruel to be gone very early, so your Blaziken doesn't have to be troubled by it, for example, or your Cloister. So it's exactly built that way, because I know everyone who has the Tentacruel they pretty much have to lead against the Oxyspeed with it, so you get that chance to damage it. So this was all, like, let's say, theory on both of our ends. On Evuelf, he's completely fine with this too. So yeah. And he gets those toxic spikes. Obviously, really sucks for my team. So we'll see how I can deal with those later. He gets even a second layer. He has nothing better to do, really. And I just keep at it with Psycho Boosting. And I really can't afford, trying to Stealth Rock in case he starts Magic Coating, which he could do. So I just kill him off with Extreme Speed at the end.
So is Extreme Speed common or usual? Because I've never seen it on Deoxys, and I also don't really know why you have it.
Right. Well, it will be evident if we just go like 2 turns, and then I can reveal it. So here comes a Kyogre, and you look at me and I'm switching out, and we can probably pause there. So, what happened? What really happened there? Because everyone who's played Ubers knows that the Oxyspeed is usually faster than Kyogre, even if it's Choice Scarf, right?
Yeah.
Well, except mine isn't. Mine is actually super bulky. And the reason for being so bulky is that I am really troubled by Arceus normal. I don't want to be leading a Deoxyspeed versus an Arceus normal and getting 2-hit KO'd by Extreme Speed. And in order to achieve that, I have to invest significantly more in bulk than normally. And that lowers my speed. So I had no choice to switch out. And that brings me to the Extreme Speed. I also lose out on being faster than a Deoxys attack form. And that's unfortunate. So I need the priority to actually anti-lead the Deoxys attack still.
Yeah.
I can't do that with anything else. My Cloister can't do it for reasons I won't reveal. And then, I have to lead. I have to lead it somehow. So that's the Extreme Speed part. It's a little bit long story of that, but that's my thinking in Builder.
Yeah.
So I eat a Water Spout pretty comfortably. And he goes Ferrothorn, which I just Draco for some chip damage. And then now that Tentacruel is gone, I can, I can get that Stealth Rocks up finally. That's nice. And Evuelf, I think he decides to go Kyogre. Doesn't want to get taunted or anything like that. And I get some chip damage on Kyogre, and he serves me, and I send out Palkia again. And here comes the sort of why I didn't just forfeit when Toxic Spikes come up. I think I start though by, you can see that turn, I think I start by just safeguarding, yeah. So Safeguard will sort of save me from the Toxic Spikes. So it acts sort of like a lumber for everything for a couple of turns, and it allows me to get Blaziken in without taking Toxic Spikes damage on this turn.
Yeah.
And we can probably pause here. Yeah, so I have a few turns left. As you see, he has 2 layers of spikes up. So my Palkia can still come in after later and get a Safeguard up. As you see, it would take 1/6 from the double spikes and can get up Safeguard once again if it's in versus something slow, which, almost 3 out of 5 is. So I'm in a sort of position now that I have to just try to go for it. And, Gliscor obviously takes whatever I can throw at the with the Blaziken. And it should really be kind of fine for Evuelf. So we can do a couple of turns. And then, so I get the Sword Stance on the switch. He even protects for good measure. I think a little bit risky, but okay. And then, this game sort of goes, well, okay. It's another protect, and then the game goes very south with a
with
1/8
that
chance to
crit.
crit kill. Yeah.
At that
So
point, it's pretty difficult for Evo to recover from that. Since
yeah, and I think what I would have done after if I wouldn't have crit, because I planned this a little bit, I had some small chances, probably, or actually quite okay chances. It really depends on place. It becomes very complicated very fast. But the main takeaway is that my Palkia will, on the next turn, it will get up a safeguard, take some toxic damage, and then die again. And then I could potentially even save Palkia Death Brawler. So that will be free. The question is what Evuelf would have done then. But, you know, that's a parallel universe, and it's hard to analyze that. But I had some tools. I think it was possible, but you know, this kind of runs away with it at the same time.
yeah.
So it's quite unfortunate, and there is no real coming back from this. Unfortunately for Evuelf. So
I think you would have killed here from Gliscor, right?
yeah, and then Palkia comes out safeguards to get like that stats protection again, and most likely he will go to Kyogre on the Palkia. We spoke about this, so. And then it becomes really complicated, I think, because my Palkia will still live one toxic turn. So I will see what his Scarf Kyogre will lock into, and then I can probably set something up like Groudon, or even my Cloyster actually, accordingly. And then the question is, how does he deal with that? Because my Cloyster actually has Rapid Spin, so if he tries to vault with Heatran, I will get permanently rid of the Toxic Spikes, and then I have an Arceus form that's yet unrevealed that actually is sort of threatening at this point too. So yeah, it's hard to tell, but definitely very unlucky for him. And I at the moment I think it was a sort of a robbery. When I analyzed it back, I think maybe quite unfortunate, but I'm not. Yeah,
So-
I wasn't 100% losing, and I don't think it was. I don't know. I can't speculate in the odds. It's very complicated.
So, let's maybe first go through
Yeah,
this
yeah.
turn. What I'm wondering here would be whether the right play could have been going into Arceus first, and
Yeah.
then having you guess between predicting the Pharaoh switch in.
Yeah.
Since you would have had to take Iron Barb's damage twice.
Yeah, so that play is sort of more guaranteed, because I'm actually really fortunate here with I have some. There's, you know, the judgment is a roll here. So maybe if it goes your way, then there is maybe a chance that he can guarantee that Iron Barb skills, depending on the roll. At least he can see that. Now he can't do much else than going for the roll, but you know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a huge difference, and Blaziken just runs away with this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, wasn't the best of games, but fun teams from both, and you know, I think he definitely got the better of me. So very interesting, of course, with the Heatran, and usually these teams are a little bit insecure versus a lot of offensive things. But it seemed to match up well into my style, for sure.
Yeah. Alright. So, well, you can't reveal anything about your team. I can maybe try to guess a bit
sure.
how this could have been. I mean, Arceus Ghost would very likely be the best choice here, since it's also another spin blocker, and Arceus Ghost in general is such a good mon. The second form I could have maybe thought it might be would be Extreme Killer Arceus, so Arceus normal with extreme speed. And the way you...
Which is in fact what it was, so you're right about that, yeah.
Yeah. Assuming by the way you played it is probably Silk Scarf or Life Orb and not Lumberry. Since you were also really reliant on that safeguard tech against these T-spikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as for the Cloister, I don't really know, to be honest, what it would have done here. I haven't really seen it often. I mean, Rapid Spin is very likely move for it to have. Shell Smash
I
as
obviously
well.
have Shell Smash, Rapid Spin, and Icicle Spear, and then there are some sort of tweaks on it from the normal sets. That makes me a little bit better versus Toxic Spikes. I have a Lumberry actually, and then there is a couple of things there, EV wise, that are key. So of course I will post all my teams after the tour, but there's a reason, you know, for these mons together try to break down each other's checks. So, you know, if you look at it, Groudon, Blaziken, E-Killer, all really like to get rid of the ghosts, right? So they can sweep Giratina O especially. So you kind of try to pile up on that, and consequently also the ghost types are the ones that block rapid spins, right? So that's sort of Cloister also likes to sort of put pressure on the ghost types. So it's all about that in this team, really. So it's a quite but I think Evuelf's preparation was honestly much better than mine, and very unfortunate for him.
So one thing to note as well, I believe we haven't mentioned that the Blaziken was Ghost Gem. I believe that means it is a guaranteed OCO after rocks against full HP Arceus Ghost with the Shadow Claw.
Ooh, I might have to double check on that, but the thing I can say about Ghost Gems, well, of course, gems are a black and white specific thing, right? So I don't think many people sort of play black and white much these days and aren't much familiar with it, but they're like a little mini Z move, like in Gen 7. Gives you a 50% boost to anything. It's actually a really broken mechanic, and like a history lesson to this is that no one really used these when we played black and white when I was a lot younger, let's say.
Yeah,
no one really cared about these
from black and white OU, if I recall
correctly. Exactly, and it was the same in OU. No one really cared. They thought, you know, I need to attack more than one time, right? So why should I use something that is just good one time and then I can't be good after that? But the thing is, it's usually that one single attack that sort of allows you to break up the game, right? That allows you to break through a key wall or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the most important. And then what you do with the other attacks is like just a bonus after that.
Yeah.
If you understand me right, if you do 80% to Giratina O with the Life Orb, let's say, on a Blaziken or something like that, why does it matter that you can do more damage to something after? Because you're just gonna get killed by the Giratina O, but now you might kill it, right? So now suddenly, okay, I'm making these calcs up, but you get the theory, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly you can actually go through that sort of what was a wall previously, and I think we were far too young when we played black and white back in the day. The community was probably much immature than it is now, and it's sort of, I am just reflecting as I go along here, but I feel like it was just something that was so underutilized, and I think it was just a couple of years ago. I think Layson, my teammate or something, used it on a team, and I think for Blaziken also, which, you know, tended to just kill itself via recoil from Flare Blitz and Life Orb and stuff like that, missing high jump kick, whatnot. That's just, you know, you know, you don't want to do that really. So this is a much more stable way to go about it.
Yeah, so, today we only have the normal gem left.
And it's only 30% power, right, or something like that too.
Well,
so
I don't really, I'm not
I don't even
sure,
know.
But yeah, that could probably be the case.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Let's move on to
go to the next one. And this one I haven't watched too closely.
So Dovahneer versus Monai, the only game I actually got to watch live. Right away,
Yeah.
this looks very scary for Dova, since Monai is playing offensive Rain, while Dova is playing so a similar defensive Rain structure with Ferrothorn and Tentacruel. By the way, if you're wondering why Tentacruel is used in Rain so much, its hidden ability is Rain Dish, which is a bonus leftovers if it is in Rain. Yeah, so
right. And I think when I look at this preview, I'm on probably a little bit opposite. I'm very worried for Monai, because this is sort of a classic matchup in Black and White. The Rain offense, which usually centers around, getting spikes up with something like Fortress, Ferrothorn, whatever, Deoxys Speed. He has Monai, obviously, Fortress. And then you wanna break stuff down and clean up with your Cabatops, which is really amazing mon. Which checks a lot of stuff, does over 50 to neutral Arceus, can check Arceus normal, can low kick the Ferrothorn, so it's not that troubled by it. So, there's a lot of good stuff about Cabatops, but one thing that really sucks for Rain offense is Toxic Spikes. Toxic Spikes sort of hinders your Swift Swimmer, it hinders your Kyogre, which could be a wall breaker like a Specs Kyogre, it hinders your Arceus, which on Monai's team, again, the unwritten rule, you probably use a Ghost when you have Spikes and there's a Fortress, so I'm gonna assume there's a Arceus Ghost on Monai's end, but it could theoretically, if it's really offensive, be Arceus normal, although I personally don't like that, but yeah. And Dovahneer, I mean, he definitely also has an Arceus Ghost, which is, sounds a little bit boring to everyone who's listening, but, Arceus Ghost is the best Pokemon in tier after Kyogre, so no surprises there. And obviously both with a Scarf Genesect. But I'm very worried about Monai. He has to sort of lead and play in such a way that either I think he has to accept the fact that Dovahneer will get Toxic Spikes and just try to mash up as many spikes as possible and wear things down and try to throw off strong attacks. And he has a Latios, so that one is a key player here to sort of float above the Toxic Spikes, obviously, and then with spikes maybe it could roar around, usually runs roar, to mess with Ferrothorn. So but I'd be worried for his Cabatops, and for Dovahneer's end, I think he has to go on a route here to be very safe about when to put up Toxic Spikes and be very careful about how he's gonna do it. I don't think he should be too hasty about it. I think he has to find the right spot where it's safe, probably versus Fortress even, maybe versus Arceus Ghost, maybe Genesect. Kyogre could be a Choice Specs variant, and you can never really assume it's something else. Could be special defensive here, of course. If it's a Choice Specs variant, it's a little bit unsafe to stay in with Thunder. It depends on your spread. If you're max defense, you should usually leave that around almost all the time, really, with Tentacruel. So that's a possibility. Sort of when I look at it from Dovahneer's end, I feel like he can be safe and lead with Genesect and U-turn versus anything really. And if he's met with a Fortress lead, he can probably just U-turn into the Tentacruel, and then he has that sort of completely fine and free chance to get up those Toxic Spikes.
Yeah.
Whereas Monai, I think, has to risk it a little bit more. Either he leads with something really strong and hopes there's no Genesect lead, or he leads with his Fortress and just says, you know what, you're gonna get Toxic Spikes anyway at some point. I'm just gonna get as many spikes as possible and spin block them while you do. So predicted leads would be, I would say, Fortress or Latios from Monai's end, and probably Genesect, or I suppose, but I think this is short-term leading Tentacruel from Dovahneer. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so one thing to also definitely keep in mind, Dova really has to keep the Ferrothorn healthy, since it's its only way to keep the Kabutops from completely cleaning and sweeping through the team.
This is a very good point, because obviously Latias and Arceus Ghost can take a hit, but I also think Ferrothorn is very, very important for Latios also, which is probably the bigger threat, honestly, because Toxic Spikes can take care of Kabutops somehow.
Yeah.
So Ferrothorn will of course be very key here, as it is always in this matchup versus Rain offense. So we'll see. So we see a Kyogre lead versus a Tentacruel, and there's what I say about the short-term things of it, because
this first turn is, with what I've just said, it's really detrimental. I don't really understand what the idea for switching into Ferrothorn here was.
Yeah, we can pause here. Yeah, I can probably explain that. So the thing is, I think Monai he sort of got the right idea here. He is not. This signals to me that he's leading with Kyogre. Signals to me he is not ready to just concede getting Toxic Spikes against him. He is willing to fight a little bit for preventing it. Personally, maybe Latios would have sort of prevented that better from Tentacruel, but though he risks leading Kyogre, and Dovahneer goes with the Tentacruel. And I'm not too sure, because as I said, it's only one roll that kills max special defense Tentacruel from full. So if it's choice specs he was expecting, he could have stayed in. He could have protected, so the signals he probably didn't have protect. There's another possibility also, and that's that Dovahneer expects a special defensive Kyogre on Monai's team. Because there's sort of an unwritten practice in Black and White that if you use a Darkrai weak lead, like your Custap Fortress, it could be on Monai's end, then you probably want a Sleep Absorber. That was sort of the case for a long time. So he might have expected a special defensive Kyogre, but if he did that, then I wonder why he wouldn't Toxic Spikes either. And he also has a Latias, which takes this hit significantly better. And,
that's my main concern with this play. That's what I'm wondering, why he, even if it is as he described, he doesn't have Protect on the Tentacruel to scout the move, why he didn't go to the Latias, with Ferrothorn being so important for the late game.
Yeah, I feel like he judges. I don't know. I felt like he must have in the end predicted Thunder. But at the same time, it's very hard to agree with this line, I would say, because the play is sort of what it is, right? So you sort of switch versus Kyogre, but the line, what was the thought behind leading Tentacruel if you're just gonna switch out, right? That seems troublesome to me, and obviously I think Monai took a great deal of risk here, because if Dovahneer had safely, which he could have done, just leaded Genesect, he would have had his Kyogre's health halved and the Water Spout damage, reduced to shreds. So he took a very big risk of facing a Genesect, because I think if he had done that, then it would have been very hard directly. So a lot of risk taking already in the first term and in the sort of analysis during team preview.
Yeah. So what you said about the Sleep Absorber, I'm wondering whether you wouldn't automatically assume that Genesect is the Sleep Absorber, so a Pokemon with the move Sleep Talk to be able to do something against Darkrai, which is also very prevalent, mostly in offense teams. Why would it? In what case would it be really the specially defensive Kyogre?
But it's impossible to tell, right? So my main message here, I think, is that you can't assume too much. Maybe he assumed special defensive, maybe he didn't, but it's very hard to assume. The Fortress could have been Lumberry for all we know. So it may have used that to, get that Toxic Spikes versus Darkrai to counteract the Dark Void. So there are a lot of things, or the Sleep Talk Genesect, as you say. There are a lot of different variations you can do here. But Monai gets this correct, forces out the Ferrothorn.
And puts Dova in a really bad position immediately.
Yeah, and this does almost as much, but Latias is faster, can recover. Very good play to Thunder there, and it's actually a Custapberry Fortress. So obviously great play by Monai. We can pause because obviously he knows that he's gonna get into range of Custap by taking a Thunder, and if Latias recovers, then he obviously can get 2 layers up. So that's very good planning, and I think this signals that he's using. Either he doesn't really care about Darkrai, which is, not that advisable, or he's using a Sleep Talk on Genesect, which is also a little bit of a band-aid, I would say. So it's a little bit suspect of a combination that he's pulling off here. I'm gonna be honest, but the Genesect plus the Specs Kyogre combo is one of the greatest offensive combinations in Black and White Ubers. So he can sort of maybe play off that. But okay, so get Stealth Rocks on Fortress, which is very rare. It's a little bit of a matchup dependent set. I would assume he scouted Dovahneer very well, because if he faced a Shatu or an Espeon, it's impossible almost to get those up. If also you having such a slow Stealth Rocker is I would say a great deal of a risk in this tier generally. Yeah.
Alright, switching in the Arceus to block the potential Rapid Spin.
Yeah, which he does, and it starts Calm Minding, and obviously he has to protect those Stealth Rocks now because Fortress is so weak. And as we see from the damage on the Tentacruel, we see that it's physically defensive Tentacruel. So that's why he didn't want to stay in versus Thunder and Kyogre, right? But I'm still wondering, was there no Protect really? Because it had the Black Sludge, right? But it had Toxic, right? Okay, so it was without Protect. So that now you sort of see what I mean. Probably the plays make a lot of sense, from for not, he didn't have Protect, so obviously couldn't have done that on turn 1. But then you got to start wondering about what was the plan, and what was the strategy in the long term to lead with Tentacruel then, if you're gonna be having forced to switch out or Kyogre. And did you actually risk, did you need to risk the Ferrothorn, or should you have just, because Thunder or Water Spout seemed to be the play and not Ice Beam, and even if Ice Beam, Latias can take that. So yeah, a little bit suspect in my book, because he had ways to very safely get up those Toxic Spikes. And did he get up? Did he actually get them up now, or did he was forced to Toxic,
Yes,
right? Or
he did get
what?
one Toxic Spike up.
Yeah, okay, but he got 1 layer at least, so there's something to play for.
Yeah.
And he got the Arceus Ghost quite weak.
And for those wondering why it does carry both Toxic and Toxic Spike, Toxic also hits Flyers for 1, like the Ladies or Giratina Origin, which both have Levitate. And you can, like he just did, Toxic a Pokemon that's right in front of you and tries to not get hit by the Toxic Spikes.
Yeah, whenever I meet new players in Black and White and try to teach a little bit of what I know, people tend to ask, how do I check Arceus Ghost, or how do I check Ghost types in general, because they're so powerful in Black and White, and the Dark types are not really that strong. There's no Yveltal. Tyranitar is very slow, can die to Focus Blast, can die to Earthquakes from Giratina. Stuff like that. So people ask me how they do it, and the sort of the history was that you put Toxic on a Rapid Spinner because Ghosts are like magnets to Rapid Spinners, because they really want to protect the spikes because they're so important in this tier. And that's how you sort of get them. You Toxic on a Rapid Spinner. So every Rapid Spinner runs Toxic in Black and White, no exception. Well, maybe Cloister then, but they run Toxic quite a lot, all of them.
Yeah.
For that reason. So It gets the download attack boost, obviously, now that it's calm-minded, gets a big iron head, gets a flinch. I
here.
think it obviously mattered, but you have to hit Focus Blast through to even get damage. I think you live a +1 Focus Blast, though I'm not entirely sure. In comes Kyogre again, gets the kill now on Ferrothorn.
Yeah, I believe from this point, it's pretty much Dova can't really win this against Kabutops anymore if Monai, if he doesn't really pull out a crazy plays and predicting.
But it's a little bit curious to me because his Kyogre is sort of an unknown for me, and it's usually special defensive on these teams to be a good Darkrai absorber and also sort of sit on other teams and a little bit like that. I really wonder what the Kyogre is, because it could have come in on a Spec-Force Spout with the Toxic reduction and rested. It could have also come in versus Arceus Ghost actually after the Toxic from Tentacruel to actually wall it. So I'm really curious to what the Kyogre was actually about.
Here comes Latios, which can just roost on it now, but he correctly predicts Latios coming in.
Again a good play, and I think Dovahneer is a little bit let down in this match by the set choices, right? So yeah, Dragon Pulse is probably an okay move on Latias, but it's usually Draco because you just want that first immediate power, and you see that if he had that here, he'd kill. He probably has Dragon Pulse for some other reason. The Tentacruel didn't have Protect, so that really let him down a little bit in the early game. So yeah, it's a little bit tough here, and in this position, I think if he's max speed Dovahneer on Latias, I think he just have to concede with the fact that he has to go for the speed tie here and hope, because he can't switch versus the Latios in this situation.
I believe one thing we've also not mentioned yet, because it's so natural at this point, the Soul Dew item for the Ladies is different from current generation. I believe now it gives a 1.2 times damage boost to Psychic and Dragon type attacks if it's held by a Latias or Latios.
Yeah, I don't even know the new mechanics to be fair.
But in this generation and also in DPP, and I don't know if it was a thing in advance.
Auras as well.
Oh yeah, alright. It gives the Ladies a 1.5 times boost in both special attack and special defense without any downsides. So imagine the Pokemon having both an Assault Vest and a Choice Specs, but not being locked into anything. They can use status moves.
Yeah, so it obviously turns both of them into top tier mons by itself.
Those items are obviously banned in OU. And only accessible in the Ubers tier.
Yeah, for sure. And here, obviously, okay, so he switched out to Arceus Ghost, thinks that, maybe I can... but there's a problem with this. We can actually pause, because I don't know if he's max speed Latias, but the problem here is that his only line of defense versus the Kabutops is the Arceus Ghost, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So now Monai gets into a position where he can continuously Psyshock, or keep it low, and then probably it's gonna be very hard to wall the Kabutops.
Yeah.
So, and he even gets a roar there on the recover, and now he gets roared back into Latias and loses the speed type presumably. So now the sequence sort of becomes for me that couldn't you have done this exact thing before even getting roared, because now you're at lower health? Did you not have to risk it? Because at some point I think it has to be risked because you're too far behind. So, but okay, he won the speed tie now.
Real quick, would the Psyshock have killed from that range it was at earlier?
Oh yeah.
Alright.
Oh yeah. For sure. Latias defense is nothing particular, so at 30%, yeah. So Genesect Revenge kills, in comes Specs Kyogre again. And Dovahneer just goes for Genesect, and I think he has to lock Ironhead, which it does.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe he could have U-turn, but
Yeah, I
it
also
doesn't
thought
really
that
matter.
U-turn here would have been the best play, but that also does force you to go either into Arceus or Kyogre and allow Monai to go into his his answer to either of these. So
Yeah.
this was probably the
Yeah.
best play
So
here.
now, curiously, it's very frail, this Kyogre. Actually, I have to check that calc because it seems quite interesting. I assume it's just special defensive Kyogre. Now, a lot of players, they say, you know, regarding special defense Kyogre is like, you know, let's say you sometimes feel that, you know, Kyogre has 140 base special defense, and you can get a lot out of that. You don't have to run all the EVs in special defense if you get me. You can put some into defense as well, so it sort of becomes a mix wall, and a lot of players do that, and that really helps versus stuff like Kabutops, because it cuts down the damage significantly actually. But it doesn't seem to be the case here. But I actually pulled up the calc here, and Adamant Life Orb Kabutops does 34 to 40.6% with a waterfall, so we seem to be in that range. And what will the Kyogre land on? I guess if you take the next turn. So we actually have... Oh, we actually have a Kyogre without a leftovers.
It did
So
have
it wasn't guaranteed. So the Stone Edge was a guaranteed. It was with leftovers. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and it seems to me that at least versus just max HP Kyogre, then Stone Edge was a guaranteed kill there. So
yeah.
And you know, here Arceus Ghost can at least tank and Judgment, and probably should. And I don't know about that because, well, I think the game quite over anyway, unless he has a Thunder Genesect. But going for Judgment there would have 2 KO'd. It would have KO'd the Kabutops.
Yeah, I believe Thunder wouldn't have done a lot in this situation since it's dead from Waterfall at this point, I believe.
Well, so the thing is that Judgment, you know, in the position he was on a couple of turns ago, if we pull it back maybe to that turn, let's see, versus Kabutops, yeah, here. So here you have the 2-hit KO on the Kyogre if they switch, right?
Yes.
You have the 1-hit KO on the Kabutops if they stay in, and you take around 55% from Waterfall. You obviously wall the Genesect, it's no big deal. It will get a special attack boost, so it won't be able to, you know, Ironhead you and flinch you and stuff like that too much. That
does make sense then. So he could have won at this point.
I don't think so, but or maybe, but well, he probably predicted that the Monai would just keep waterfalling and that he could recover stall it. But I think going for Judgment and being waterfall would have left him at around, you know, 25%. Then the Genesect comes in, and if he has a special Genesect with Thunder, he would actually get a special attack boost, and then he could actually clean with his own Genesect Dovahneer. I don't think he had though, but if he had that, then Judgment could have definitely won him the game here. Yeah. But he didn't, so probably.
I believe it
chose the path of trying to go for play off the maybe a choke.
Yeah, I believe if he did double Judgment here, instead the Genesect could have also come in and pressed Ironhead repeatedly.
No, it wouldn't work. It would have gotten a special attack boost, and of course with major hacks he could have done it, but he would have gotten Will-O-Wisp most likely, and then recover stalled, and then Arceus Ghost would have actually killed the Genesect, and then it would have killed the Kabutops. So I think without hacks and the way that this actually was played, it's easy with hindsight, of course, but if he had judgmented the Cowtops, which I think was a perfectly reasonable play anyway, not in the least because, you might get flinched by Waterfall after trying to recover stall it anyway, right? Maybe not the first one, but the second one or so. So I think the judgment would have given him the best opportunities, but at the same time maybe an auto loss if he didn't have Thunder on his own Genesect, so I can understand it. But it was almost losing, so very interesting game here. And it really shows the power of Toxic Spikes versus Rain offense, right?
Yeah, I felt to consider that it could have Will-O-Wisp. So the idea I had here was that it pressed Ironhead to force it. It would have been at, what was it? 86%, and forced it to attack at some point, at which it would be low enough for the Carbotops to clean up and press Waterfall against it, and then also KO the Genesect after, but
it would have lived all the attacks, but of course there are flinch chances. Okay, so there is the Ironhead where it's in range, and we see Genesect versus Genesect. Dovahneer reveals that he doesn't have Thunder, so probably the idea I had with the judgment, probably not the best idea, but I think it was worth maybe going for anyway. But I can understand both lines, and it turned out to be really close in the end. Actually, so on those sort of pivotal turns around turn 19, it was actually very close.
Yeah, so that play, turn 1 did leave him in a really bad position. He did manage to recover the position quite a bit, but it sadly wasn't enough.
But it sort of again shows that these Rain offenses, a natural enemy is sort of these Toxic Spikes, Rain stalls.
Yeah, definitely.
Even by getting so far ahead, it managed to be quite close, just because of one layer of Toxic Spikes.
Yeah. Alright, then let's move on to the next game. LPZ versus Blim.
So this is sort of also a pretty common matchup, I would say, where two Spikes offenses face off, and you have the Deoxys Speed versus Deoxys Attack. Deoxys Speed is obviously faster than Attack. Attack can sort of try to anti-lead certain Deoxys Speeds by being stronger, so it uses Dark Pulse and Extreme Speed, sort of limited to certain amount of hazards. So yeah, is there anything you are on about on this preview? It's a pretty straightforward one, I would say.
So about the team of LPZ, I see 3 potential leads, so I don't quite know what to expect from that. I also haven't seen that game before. So Deoxys Attack can lead with a Focus Sash if it there's spikes and all that stuff. Dialga also sometimes used as a lead with just South Rocks or the Rayquaza anti-lead, which is very strong, which does look very strong here, I'd say. Yeah, then...
Always is, and I mean, when looking at LPC's team, again, we have this Deoxys Attack probably with the spikes, Dialga probably with the rocks, maybe not. And then, how do you protect those hazards? Well, you have to use a Narcissus Ghost. Whereas Blim actually, I think it's the first Giratina we've seen today. So
yeah.
that's so now we definitely know that Blim is not using a Ghost type. Well, could obviously in theory, but would be little bit insane. So on such an offensive team that Blim has, and I mean this team has been around for ages, but you have to think it's Arceus normal 99,000 times out of 100. Curiously about Blim's team is that there's really not a very good way to have a Scarfer on it, and in Black White there are so many good, well obviously Genesect, but Choice Scarf is very powerful and you probably almost need it on every team. There are certain exceptions, and it seems very hard to fit in with a Scarfer on Blim's team.
Yeah, I would say
to
Palkia is the most likely one, but you would also want to
Yeah.
have it as some sort of defensive backbone against rain. It's a really good
Yeah,
switch
and
into Kyogre, at least for a few times. It can, of course, do that repeatedly, but with offense, you
exactly.
don't really plan on doing it repeatedly.
Right, and that's probably why Palkia is there, because it's sort of less longevity than Lati Twins, right? So it doesn't have recovery. And usually, you know, Scarf Palkia is sort of looked down on, and it's for good reason. I think it's actually absolutely terrible, but it can be used on some teams. But the problem is that you sort of get stuck on Ferrothorn very easily with it, and then you concede a lot of spikes. So it's better to have all those slots open. So we'll see what if Blim uses even a Scarfer, and we'll see what happens. So we have a Deoxys attack versus Darkrai lead, which immediately moves before the Deoxys attack.
It was Scarf Darkrai. Okay.
Yeah. So we see that Blim sort of tricked him a little bit. Usually, you know, Deoxys speed is completely fine leading versus Deoxys attack. Obviously, Deoxys attack is also fine leading versus Deoxys speed, so it goes a little bit both ways. But Blim decided, you know, I have a different plan on how to approach this matchup. I'm gonna put you to sleep first, and you know, the first turn is obviously guaranteed unless he misses the entire thing.
Also breaks the stash with the bad dreams.
Yeah, exactly. It breaks the sash, so that's really good. Part of Darkrai's strength, really. But at the same time, here on turn 1, Blim has already sort of expanded the Darkrai, if you think about it. First off, he has used the Dark Void, which is the most powerful weapon. Second, he has shown that his Choice Scarf, which is significantly worse set than the other sets, now lacks the sort of ability to be a real big threat. Can't sort of, you know, he has to predict if he wants to Focus Blast the Dialga or Dark Pulse the presumed Arceus Ghost, right? So there's a lot of value he gave away for this turn, so he probably wants to go immediately to Deoxys speed now to try to kill the Deoxys attack and then set up all his hazards. And we might see a very interesting mechanic here in Black and White, because, you know, sleep turns, they reset upon switch out. So you can't burn off sleep turns and stay in. But at the same time, if you have expended the Dark Void from Darkrai, you definitely want to keep your sleep fodder so that you don't have to fodder something again.
Yeah,
and
also real quick to explain what you mean by expanded the Dark Void. We of course have the sleep clause, which means that you can only put one Pokemon to sleep at a time, which in conclusion means you can have one Pokemon asleep and the opposing Pokemon which inflicts sleep can no longer use that tool of it.
And I think I want to add to that, you know, on Showdown we even hard-coded, which is different from cartridge games, that, you know, if you try to sleep something where you have already slept something, it will fail. So you will lose that turn. It will say Sleep Clause mode activated, right? So what LPC should always do here is to switch out, because he knows that the Darkrai can't press Dark Void again, it will fail. And he knows that Blim probably wants to go to Deoxys speed to get up his hazards or kill the Deoxys attack. So naturally for me, he needs to switch to Rayquaza probably, which is his other anti-lead versus Deoxys speed. And then we'll play on, right? So that's sort of what you have to do here.
Yeah.
And yeah,
he does stay in, and that is...
Yeah, I think this is sort of a game-losing sequence. Yeah, he should have used Sleep Clause to his advantage, because he completely loses. He tries to wake up for some reason, and I mean, the first turn wake is a 33% chance. So it's not a consistent way of valuing it, because of course if you switch out, you're on 100% chance to at least do something, because you know that Darkrai can't can't stay in. You could even go to Dialga or something if you're really scared of like a crazy double switch to Groudon or whatever, or Palkia even.
Yeah, this also means that Darkrai is now able to sleep something from LPZ again, since the Mon that was asleep has fainted.
Yeah. So basically he plays 5 versus 6 now without having accomplished much of anything, so it's a huge uphill now. And of course he sends in the Rayquaza here, so he obviously knew that it could be a good Deoxys speed. And there's the Focus Sash, kind of old school, but kind of works. He tries to not go for the extreme speed because Taunt goes first. I suppose he tries to make a play here, hoping for something, because he's so far behind already that
Is that a common Rayquaza set with Draco Meteor and Dragon Tail? I believe I haven't seen that before.
It is quite used. I think I used it a couple of years ago. It's never a bad idea. You have a lot of hazards in this tier, and obviously you drop the Draco Meteor, so you wanna maybe a Calm Mind Arceus wants to come in set up, but now you say just Dragon Tail it out. So yeah, no, it's a good set.
Sure. And what did Blim taunt for here? Which move did he?
That is an extremely curious thing to do.
Thing I could have assumed why he did use taunt was he was maybe expecting a switch into another Pokemon who could have tried to set up, but then again, why would have had set up in front of him if he can just taunt?
If he expected that, he can just use taunt.
Taunt the turn after.
My only logical explanation is that he did not have spikes on the Deoxys speed and simply had nothing better to do.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it is like that. I think I have to assume that, but I don't think that's the case. So maybe he was just expecting, the extreme speed and he just pressed the random button, or maybe he was scared of something janky like a Tailwind Rayquaza setting up. Maybe a Dragon Dance, but with Draco that's like very with Draco and Dragon Tail. I have to assume he didn't have spikes.
Right.
And obviously here comes extreme speed. Gets KO, so we can keep going. I mean, this game is sort of over to me. Gets Thunder Waved, which it's a bit of a weird Thunder Wave because I'm not sure. You probably really want to be faster in case of Timid Dialga.
Yeah, okay, I don't believe I have also not seen a podcast set like that before. I think most common are either Substitute or All-Out Attack with Thunder, Fire Blast, Hydro Pump, and Spatial Rend.
So when you look at Blim's team, you see the issue that he has with speed control, as we said. The Scarf is Darkrai, but he might want a little bit more on that thing. So, but if this was Timid Life Orb Dialga, which it could have been, then Thunder Waving it so that your Groudon is faster is a good play. So I can see where that Thunder Wave is coming from, although I think a Spatial Rend was also fine.
Yeah.
Obviously here comes Kyogre trying to sort of do something, but this Groudon seems to be very offensive, does a boatload of damage, and then this is a Specs Kyogre.
Yeah, which just about to ask. That looks like Specs damage.
And we can also pause on the, why do you go Giratina? Why do you keep Groudon? So I think Blim in his mind has made it up that this guy has an Arceus Ghost. So I'm gonna actually sack my Arceus normal check because I'm banking on the Arceus Ghost. I'm kind of wondering if there was another way to go about it where you can still assume both, let's say, but 9 times out of 10 on LPC's team it has to be Arceus Ghost, so I can definitely agree with this Giratina sack.
Yeah, is this Groudon Earth Plate?
Yeah, definitely. So likely Earthplate, and then likely a pretty bulky Kyogre, I would say, with max HP if it does only 75.
Yeah.
Because there is a benchmark you have to sort of get when you EV your Kyogre. That's a little bit tricky to find, to live an Earthquake after Stealth Rock and Spikes with it, which I think needs some investment in defense. So this might be a little bit just a max HP choice specs Kyogre. Or, a very low roll on a Earthquake.
Yeah. I believe the Giratina switching is mostly because he doesn't need it against the rest of the team that
Yeah,
much.
he feels like it is Arceus Ghost. I'm just gonna value my other mons. Yeah. And, he gets a sneak and kill the Kyogre, which, LPC doesn't want to waste health on Genesect. He needs it really badly for Darkrai. Could have maybe wasted health on Dialga though. It was a free switch in, I would say, to go Dialga on the Shadow Sneak. But yeah, and then he gets tricked. So Darkrai obviously has the choice Scarf to trick away, and now he can freely use moves.
Yeah.
So he goes for Void after the trick, which I think is a fantastic play. We can also pause about that. We can go back to the early tricks.
The two plays, I believe, here were either going into Groudon, expecting the Dialga to stay in, but why this play was correct here, I believe, was because if the now Scarf Dialga used Thunder immediately to kill the Darkrai, the Groudon would have probably been able to set up with Rock Polish. I think Rock Polish is pretty likely here.
Yeah, and then win the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I also want to note a very funny mechanic in Black and White. If you trick and the other mon has a choice scarf as well, then you may choose a new move, so you're not locked into trick, which is I think different from Diamond Pearl. So say that LPC goes into Genesect expecting the trick, then Darkrai can actually choose Dark Void on the subsequent turn. Yeah. So it's very risk-free for Blim to trick.
I believe
it was a great play.
This mechanic is like this in from Generation 5 onwards, and then...
Yes.
Alright, and switching into the Genesect then because of the Sleep Talk, I think?
Yeah, well, obviously because of the fact that he can't stay in with a Thunder-locked Dialga. If Groudon comes in, he can set up for free. But now, it sort of becomes a very messy situation because now he has a Nasty Plot, which is rare, but he has Nasty Plot on the Scarf Darkrai. And now he locks into Roar because he's choice locked. And now he has 3 setup sweepers to him, I believe. And he's just gonna... Well, I think he should just start... Yeah, he'll just start to set them up, really. And eventually Dialga will run out of PP and something will get set up, right? So
yeah.
So actually he just keeps pressing setup button on anything because it will be good whatever happens. And if sort of a lot of turns go by, just keeps trying to set up, and then eventually he actually sets up and he switches to Arceus Ghost, which is sort of a check to E-Killer. And then he gets a crit Focus Blast actually, which, on a Shuffle Berry and the special defense drop. So a lot of things, unlucky things happen at once. And then he actually misses the Focus Blast, which would have killed, so he gets some of that bad luck back directly.
Would the Arceus have lived if it didn't crit the second Focus Blast, if it didn't crit and didn't lower the special defense? I believe so.
Yeah. I mean... The idea with Chopple is that you always leave 2 Focus Blasts.
Yeah.
But I think even if he had, to be fair, even if Focus Blast had killed the Arceus, he would have probably won with Rock Polish on the Groudon in the late game. So, as he will now. Yeah. So it probably didn't matter too much. So, okay, very... sort of stable victory for Blim, but I think he was aided a lot by those misplays in the early game.
Yeah, this first turn, how this first sequence played out did really leave him an unfortunate spot where he had to play 5 versus 6 with hazards
Yeah.
up. No
Yeah.
hazards of his own.
So yeah, that should have been done differently. And then probably there was a fighting chance for him in this matchup. I mean, nice things about black and white is that many matchups are quite even. So I can't actually say that I think I'd favor one or the other of these teams.
All right. And then lastly we have Kebabe against Xiao.
Yeah, you have to start laughing at team preview when you see this.
I'm already wondering about about the Excadrill without a Tyranitar. And the
Right.
Kebabe team looks also a bit curious, I'd say.
Yeah, I was involved in helping my friend Kebabe, obviously, to build this team, so I know it pretty well. So at the same time, I'm probably not gonna reveal everything about it, but a lot of tech will be revealed anyway, so it's fine. So I will probably be able to talk a lot about it. So the first thing we see that Kebabe immediately breaks our rule. So he brings a team that doesn't have a ghost type but has spikes because he has a fortress. So you see that immediately. He just said, everyone thinks you should have a ghost type on teams with spikes, and he just says, nah, screw that. I'm gonna break the rule. So that's sort of what Kebabe does in this tier. And he obviously predicts correctly the Excadrill because he looks at the preview and imagines, this Excadrill probably is a mold breaker set because obviously no sand, and then obviously wants to get Stealth Rocks up very fast. So I'm just gonna take it down to the Focus Sash, and I'm gonna play from there.
Yeah.
Whereas Xiao, he thinks, nothing will stop my Stealth Rocks. I'm just gonna get him up immediately. So, fair plays to both of these guys.
Also, I believe we haven't talked about what the Arceus on Lee's team might be. I think also Phyteus or E-Killer is...
Yeah, I would even say Arceus Electric could be used on this team to provide a flying resist to Ho-Oh and also like a really kind of nice win condition. I will also say that on team preview you can see that the Kyogre on Li Xiao's team kind of needs to be the Scarfer. These teams need to have a Scarfer, and there's no other good slot. So Kyogre probably is choice Scarf, and so the Arceus form is really tricky on Li Xiao's team. And obviously trying to analyze Kebabe's team is like it doesn't follow the rules, okay? So we can't really, but we obviously see a Heatran, which is kind of cool. We see a Lugia, maybe some kind of wall. We see a Gothitelle, which is probably a trapper. It is a trapper, but what is it trapping is the question. And as you see from Kebabe's team now with the fight Arceus revealed is that he doesn't have a Kyogre check. In fact, he doesn't even have a water resist. So he probably is completely fine with letting the Groudon die and then, trapping the Kyogre in Sun with a Gothitelle somehow to remove that and win the weather so his Heatran can win. So that I know a little bit because I helped build the team, but that's sort of the basis of it, right?
That's kind of Kebabe team. I don't recall the name, but it reminds me of this one chess world champion who also he had a lot of curious plays, but won by confusing the opponent with these plays so much.
Yeah, and he really does, and so yeah, and then obviously the Fortress to get some spikes up for the Heatran to function well. So he's kind of running a stall team, Kebabe, I would say. So we'll see how it goes. So Judgment, and then down to the Sash it goes. Stealth Rocks go up, and Kebabe says, "No, I'm not gonna let you do whatever here. I'm just gonna go to my Fortress and threaten the Rapid Spin. So the Excadrill switches out, doesn't want to get sacked immediately, and now Fortress gets spikes up because now the Excadrill is dead, can't spin, and the whole ghost, we can pause here, I think.
Yeah.
The whole ghost issue is alleviated a lot, right? Because now he doesn't have to worry about exclusive spinning. Obviously he gets a spike up, which is good for Kyogre. So he starts off the game, it starts pretty well here,
Yeah.
I would say.
Also, is this Fortress set common with leftovers and Protect? I mean, it's obviously not a suicide lead like usually.
Yeah, well, they can be run with certain styles like bulk gear, so it's always good scout moves. So not the most common, obviously, but it's not like the craziest thing. It's not unheard of, let's say. So, and what Kebabe will do against the Giratina O is to attempt to PP stall it. Actually, immediately, he will try to do everything he can to waste as much PP as possible. So he will protect, he will heal, he will try to attack it with Gothitelle maybe. He will do whatever it takes to get rid of as much PP as possible, while keeping the momentum so that Xiao cannot get spikes up of his own, so that it's less effective at shuffling.
Yeah.
So that, and as you see here, he Dragon Tails into Heatran, and Heatran goes for Protect, also checking if it's Earthquake presumably on the Giratina O. And then he can Protect again, I think, and then shake the Water Spout, and now he has to go to Screwdon, and as you see, it takes quite little damage, so we can pause there. So that's obviously the special defensive Groudon, max special defense probably, and then you see Xiao is very scared here, because if he kills the Groudon, he loses the Kyogre, so he doesn't want to do that. Whereas Kebabe is completely fine getting killed, so he just throws off an uncommon move, which is Lava Plume, and gets the burn, which is, if we pause there, it could have been very... the game could have been over if this Giratina didn't have rest, because that Lava Plume burn would have been so big, but, he didn't get it, or he did get it, but there is a rest.
Another thing to note, Groudon only got Will-O-Wisp in later generation. I believe it was 9, but not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a very late thing. So what Kebabe does is he takes the chances to go to Arceus fighting on the rest turn, so he can pressure probably a little bit. He gets up the Stealth Rocks and get Dragon Tailed out. So now we can pause again. We know that the Giratina is Rest, Sleep Talk, Dragon Tail, and Roar. It hasn't revealed Roar, but that's like a very common stall breaking set for Giratina, where it sort of it tries to get those 66% chances, 2/3 of a chance to pick a facing move while sleeping, to ignore the negative priority, and really go make a number with the spikes. So he tries to sort of get that, and Lugia gets dragged in here. So yeah. No leftovers on Lugia, goes for Roost, curiously, and then fails with the rest. So now Kebabe goes to Heatran, and then he gets roared.
Dragon Tail and Roar, so this really just wants to phase around the opponent with all the hazards up. Yeah, makes sense with Excadrill and Skarmory, which is combination of both spikes and the Stealth Rocks then. I believe I've only seen this set on the normal Giratina before, not Origin, because it's a bit bulkier.
It can be run on Giratina because you are spikes immune, so you can get many opportunities to get it in. So as you see, Xiao's team has a Skarmory, Giratina, and a Latios. They all take minimal damage from hazards, so really hazard resilient core right there. Yeah. So Kebabe keeps protecting, and protects from Roar in this generation, which newer players might not know. He gets up a Toxic Spikes even, so he's double spikes, Toxic Spikes, and Protect.
Yeah, these Toxic Spikes will be really detrimental to Kyogre, which already takes now 25% upon switching in, as well as the Arceus.
Yeah. and now he gets Dragon Tail out in the Groudon. And just when you thought you had seen it all, he pulls out the rest on Groudon as well. So again, he's gonna try everything he can to just force out as many PP as possible from Xiao. And here comes the Gothitelle.
What hidden power was that?
So that is revealed hidden power Ice.
Alright.
So Ice on a choice specs Gothitelle,
Yeah,
as you can see by the damage.
Also,
And the reason for that, sorry?
Oh yeah, well, just wanted to explain what hidden power is. So it's not a move anymore since Sword and Shield, also not in Scarlet and Violet. In Generation 7 and before, you had hidden power, which could assume any type except the fairy type, even in the generation after the fairy type was introduced. And it did change a bit over the generations. I believe from Generation 5 and onward, it was purely special and always had a base power of 60.
It's 70 in Generation 5, so it started being 60 in Generation 6. It could actually be lower than 70, depending on certain things, your IVs, I think. But 70 is the max. So this is a 70 base power iced attack that's thrown at the Giratina, which does a respectable 42%. Gothitelle. And to note is that ghost types cannot escape shadow tag in Gen 5.
Yeah.
Also very important to note. And Kebabe gets dragged into Groudon, and he pulls out the Rest Talk Groudon with Lava Plume and Roar. So he gets rid of that.
The Thunder and Sun hits and paralyzes immediately. That's also...
Yeah, so that's quite lucky, but he also doesn't push it and wants to risk it. So instead switches out. Fortress keeps trying to protect here to further diminish the PP. And where are we with the PP if you pause? If you look at it, so we see that he's wasted 12, I think, on this turn that will end. It will have been he wasted 5 of the sleep talks, and once the sleep talks are gone, it's a much lesser threat. So just something to keep in note. And then he wakes up and roars. And Lugia comes in and roosts. And another phase here. And Groudon comes in and attempts to get the roar, actually. And now Skarmory comes in.
To mention here is able to roar faster because it doesn't have a negative priority with Sleep Talk being the move that calls the roar.
Yeah, so now as you see, the Groudon probably scares out Skarmory because of Lava Plume, the risk of pulling Lava Plume. It pulls the Lava Plume, forces out the rest from Giratina, and roars once again to get rid of it, and reveals the Arceus to be grass. We can probably pause a little bit there because to me this team is it's very fishy. It does not have a bulky steel type, Exegil Sash, so it will be sacked in the early game. The Kyogre is very weak because it's Scarf, so it will be super weak to kill Latias and Latios. And the team in itself does not have a way to handle Thunder from opposing Latios or Latias. It will simply I don't know. It cannot really reliably beat those. The Giratina O doesn't even have Shadow Sneak, so it can't damage through that either. The Skarmory is obviously bait. So for me, that the Arceus form is a really letdown of this build.
So I'm wondering...
That really drags it down.
What is the general purpose of Arceus Grass here on the team? What might the idea behind that have been?
Honestly, it's very, very hard to see. Because he has a Latios to check the opposing Kyogre, if there is one. And sort of the defensive niche of Arceus Grass being good versus Groudon obviously has that covered via both Skarmory and Giratina O. It's very hard to see how Arceus Grass is justified on a team like this, I'm gonna have to be honest. Especially when you sort of look at how threatening a special Genesect even a choice scarf Gensect, right, with special attacks. Bug Buzz, Thunder, Ice Beam. It could be absolutely devastating versus this team. It just locks into Ice Beam. It doesn't really particularly hate that Kyogre would switch into an Ice Beam because, it's Scarf Kyogre. It will be worn down by hazards and attacks anyway. So it's really a weird Arceus form to me, which could have been much better picked to alleviate some of these weaknesses, but also to create like a less passive team.
Yeah.
So I find that a very suspect one.
I'm also looking through the VR right now as to what Pokemon it could potentially check, but maybe some super specific mon. But I think what you've mentioned, most of the weaknesses or Pokemon that this form covers are already covered by the rest of his team.
And I mean, I can also add that your Arceus is sort of your only practical way of dealing with on these bulky teams. It's usually one of your practical ways of dealing with a Rayquaza, something like that, like a wall breaker. And Arceus Grass obviously can never deal with Rayquaza because even if you have Rain Up, Rayquaza has the airlock, and then you get KO'd by the V-Create, so you can't really switch into Rayquaza either. So it does also leave that gaping hole there. So I kind of find it very strange choice of an Arceus for a build like this.
Yeah.
And obviously Heatran is completely free in versus this Arceus Grass, and then
Arceus Caress usually carries, I'd say, Calm Mind, Recover, Judgment, Grass type, and Ice Beam.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most common because it can set up on Ferrothorn, for example, because it can't be Leech Seeded. But it could also run support moves like Will-O-Wisp. But either way. And I think now if you pause, we can check the sleep counter.
One turn asleep.
Let us go one turn further. Okay, so now he has 10 sleep talks left, so he's getting quite worn down with the sleep talks here, and obviously he has to rest here, or he gets hit by a big hidden power ice. Right. So okay. So that's a rather lucky crit, I would say. It would have sort of been a little bit of a numbers game then if it could have sort of rested after, because it obviously Dragon-tailed or roared here, because the Gothitelle moved first, as you see. So it probably tried to Dragon-tail, and then the question is, what does it Dragon-tail out? Because if it Dragon-tails out the Arceus fighting, then it actually is in Ice Beam range without the crit. And then obviously if it gets thrown into Heatran or Fortress, both those can probably still waste a lot of PP from rest and sleep talks. Lugia 2, Groudon 2, so the game would have gone on, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I don't think it was a game, sort of a game-changing crit by any means. I think it could have still been won, and probably could have been won by Li Xiaolong as he hit and the paralyzed the Fortress in Sun with a Thunder, so he probably had good chances that he would normally not have to break through that as well. So yeah, very unlucky, of course.
Yeah.
And the Groudon again. Now it
fully
looks
healed.
Really.
Yeah.
Now fully healed with the rest, and takes minimal damage from a Scarf Surf. Can even just keep on resting here.
The Kyogre is in a really bad spot now. I believe it can only come in one more time.
Yeah, and he tries to sacrifice the Fortress as he feels like he should not play with fire. He just wants to get in his actual check to the Latios, which is Heatran, safely.
The second Thunder, the Sun hits.
Obviously didn't matter much, but here, but it's another third Thunder actually, so very much hitting those. But now that Larios is toxic, it's game over.
Yeah.
This is Assault endgame, so it will just be about technique now. So Kebabe just uses his Arceus fighting, sort of provide offense and defense at the same time here. Getting that Skarmory, rid of that Skarmory, and you know, now getting sort of pressure on the Larios with big ice beams. So an interesting game.
Interesting teams also.
Yeah, with a lot of interesting team choices, for good and bad. Obviously, gonna much harder to analyze Kebabe's team if it's good, if it's bad. Yeah, I'm gonna be silent on that, but I definitely did not like the Arceus choice here on Li Xiao's team. I think it creates more weaknesses than it, patches up, holds for.
Yeah. So
yeah.
In total, definitely an interesting week. We had different matchups, and every game also was very interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, there were aspects of each game. Maybe not necessarily all the games were too well played, but people definitely tried, I think, to come up with stuff this time around, and it's nice to see that the metagame still evolves a little bit from time to time, and that some people try to push it. It was very refreshing to see.
Yeah, we can also take a look at the black and white Ubers matchups from next week. So, Evuelf was playing against Dovahneer. What do you think we can expect there?
Yeah, so for me it's like a pretty close one. I mean, Evuelf, I'd favor him, but as I'm in the tour, I'm not gonna go into what I think they are gonna use. Dova obviously use a lot of different spikes teams, and Evuelf can just really use anything. It'll be interesting to watch.
Next up is LPZ versus you.
Yeah, okay, very exciting. Gotta play a new player. I haven't played in this tier before. We'll see. I saw the errors in the early game, so he probably has improved since then. So that's always the scary part about playing people that are new. They will always get better for each game. So definitely have a lot of respect for the opposition there. And
Kebabe
versus Monai. And I've seen Monai a lot. I think his performance was quite solid. Very risky, the way we analyzed the game, but played with a considerable risk. But I think he is one of the sort of new black and white Ubers players I've seen around, and really came from nowhere as far as I'm concerned. But of course, I'm not that knowledgeable about the player base. That's gonna be an exciting one. Obviously, Kebabe could bring,
very crazy team once again.
Yeah, you can't really predict that.
And lastly, we have 3D versus Blim.
So 3D is subbing in for the Li Xiao, right? That was the intended starter. So I assume would have brought the same team as Li Xiao used if they decided on it collectively. Blim is obviously one of the best black and white players ever too, so clear favorite here. But and used sort of, let's say, he stuck to what he is comfortable with in game week 1, Blim. So no big innovations there.
Yeah.
But,
so
maybe a smaller adjustment with the Scarf Darkrai, but. He knows what works and what doesn't work, and will use that.
Yeah, so that is that. Do you have anything else to add to this week?
No, it was very nice to do this. So we'll see what happens this game week, and if we get many other good replays to analyze next time.
Yeah, and so, like I said last time, this was sort of trying out this in-depth analysis format. Next, you can probably expect something similar for advanced Ubers, but with more commentators again. And then we are also going to have the complete general weekly recap with also general expectations. And with that, goodbye.